Hello, we're happy to get this chance to present to you. This presentation was originally presented in Dublin at the INHWE conference there, and my name is Tony Breitbach. I'm pleased to be with my colleague, Katie Eliot, presenting this presentation. Connecting interprofessional teaching to collaborative scholarship, some keys to success. After this session, we're hoping that you'll be able to describe kind of the personal and professional benefits of collaborative scholarship, identify specific approaches to connecting interprofessional teaching with collaborative scholarship, and develop strategies for collaborative scholarships in your own personal context.
And hello, my name is Katie Eliot. I am an assistant professor at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. And like Tony mentioned, I'm really excited to be here today to talk a little bit about how we have come to be collaborative scholars together. And what we like to do is tell a little bit of our stories so that you can get a flavor of how we got started in conducting research in interprofessional education and collaborative practice. So my story begins kind of in an unlikely place in the outskirts of San Salvador, El Salvador, where I went on an interprofessional international medical mission trip way back in 2008 with a team from St. Louis University. It was there that I had my first experience on a truly interprofessional healthcare team, and I was hooked. But as I started learning more about interprofessional education and collaborative practice, I realized that there really was a lot more to it than met the eye. And so as I began to get more immersed in teaching in the interprofessional education program at St. Louis University, I also had the opportunity to look more deeply into what was going on in my own profession. By training, I am a registered dietitian, and I started in about 2015 looking at how we were addressing interprofessional education in our curriculum and in our profession. And that really is where the journey into this scholarship began. And I really started being able to get the word out that interprofessional education and collaborative practice was really the right thing to do for our profession and for our scholarship. And so I'm going to hand it over now to Tony to let him tell you a little bit about his story.
Hi there. My name is Tony Breitbach. I'm director of the athletic training program at St. Louis University. Academics is kind of my second career. I worked clinically as an athletic trainer for 22 years, and then I finished my PhD. And in 2007, I moved from being the head athletic trainer at St. Louis University over to the director of the athletic training program. And during that time, my first year, I really didn't have students in our program, so I was really given the opportunity to be a faculty member in most of our IPE courses at St. Louis University, and I really found that it really aligned very nicely with my own personal story on the way I delivered care when I worked as a clinician. So I really connected with IPE, and so I got a chance because I was on the executive committee for education of the National Athletic Trainers Association to be involved in the Future Directions in Athletic Training Education document. Part of my role is that I authored several of the recommendations, one of those being IPE being included in athletic training programs moving forward. And then as a part of that group, we developed a white paper on interprofessional education and practice in athletic training, and it really helped me really understand the literature. We brought together a team of 23 authors to write this paper, and I got through that process. I developed some skills and experience with collaborative scholarship, and so this is a kind of a reunion of our group of co-authors at one of our education conferences here. So then I got a chance to start doing collaborative scholarship at St. Louis University, and I think one of the first conferences I really presented with my colleagues at was Collaborating Across Borders, I was part of a poster in Vancouver. This is Irma Rubling. Many people have probably seen our Attitudes and Perceptions articles, which is really a pretty seminal article in which evaluated the ripples in the University of West England questionnaire. And then I have many other roles. One of those being I am the Interprofessional Education Subcommittee Chair for the Association of Schools Advancing Health Professions, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Great, thanks, Tony. So I'm going to get us started talking a little bit about kind of our roots, our very beginning of when Tony and I started working together. And this was back in about 2011, 2012, when Tony was writing an article about, he was leading an article about buy-in to integration and how to really bring together academic programs into an interprofessional initiative. And this was really my first experience on a large team-based scholarship project. And as we started working and developing these collaborative writing skills, we recognized that there really were many similarities between our professions of athletic training and nutrition and dietetics, which really also kind of launched this foundation of collaborative scholarship. And that paper was published in the Journal of Allied Health in 2013. And again, really, we kind of see this as our beginning of this journey. But from there, each of us had some individual projects that we had worked on simultaneously. And the fun part about collaborative scholarship, which we'll talk a little bit more about towards the end of our presentation, is that while we were working on these projects separately, we were always kind of touching base and sharing ideas and asking for feedback on each of these. So I'm not going to talk through each of mine, but hopefully what you can see from this list is that, again, while we had things going on together with scholarship, we were also doing our individual work in our own professions of trying to spread the word about interprofessional education, practice, and research.
And part of my experience with this also is that I was probably on the tenure track a little earlier than Katie at St. Louis University. So I was moving forward with some other projects that, I needed to in my faculty role as on the tenure track. One thing I would definitely like to highlight was I did a project with Scott Reeves and Simon Fletcher where we utilized sport to study interprofessional collaboration. We worked together on a scoping review, and then we worked together to do a World Cafe at Altogether Better Health in Oxford in 2016. Scott was a tremendous mentor and friend, and he's very missed, and that was a wonderful experience working with those individuals. So the chance we had to really work together was at the 2014 National Athletic Trainers Association annual meeting in Indianapolis. We, because of some of the things that we have done in our classes, we do an interprofessional grand rounds, and we felt really comfortable working together and working on a topic in interprofessional management of a diabetic athlete. We were accepted, and as you can see, it was a very large presentation. We were one of the featured presentations at that meeting. We brought together Katie, a dietitian, myself, Amy Drew, a pharmacologist, and Tyler Wadsworth, who's our medical director of our athletic training program, and he's a sports medicine primary care physician. And we basically laid the foundation for management of diabetes in athletes, but then we also created a case where we presented it together, probably in front of several thousand people at the National Athletic Trainers Association meeting. And I think that was one of the things where we really got some confidence in the time outside of when we were presenting. We got a chance to talk about ideas, things that we can work together. We developed kind of an ethos for collaboration, which was really important. And we understood that the similarities between our professions of athletic training and nutrition and dietetics moving forward. So then we talk about one of the first projects we got involved with is that we developed this institutional readiness for IPE. I had earlier done a survey in 2012 of athletic training program directors regarding IPE, and we decided kind of at this meeting in Indianapolis is saying, hey, we could do this and replicate it for the AT program directors, and then just also involve the nutrition and dietetics program directors. And we got an amazing response. We got a 42% response rate in athletic training, 31% in nutrition and dietetics, and we really found a lot of our data really aligned very nicely. We had our dean was a part of it. She's a dietitian, and then Mardell Wilson and Maria Shushak. That's one of the important things we'll talk to you about. Our office has a doctoral student from industrial organizational psychology, working as a research assistant, and she was an amazing resource. We also involved Dr. Mickey Cuppett, who was involved with the original study with me. So when we look at that, we published that in the Journal of Allied Health. So we did actually, we organized around this project, and our seminal document was really this combination document that we published in the Journal of Allied Health. We found that really the main factors that affected the differences in IPE in both of our programs is really the level of program and the academic unit where it resides. Post-baccalaureate and being housed in colleges of health professions really impact involvement with IPE. But I also think that, you know, as we all know, that institutional factors such as resource commitment, those types of things are also key to that. But that really, this is really kind of one of the three main articles that came out of this research project.
And I'll talk a little bit about the paper that we were able to publish in one of the nutrition-specific journals. And this is really where, as we started to build momentum for our scholarship, we realized that if at the beginning we were very strategic about how we would go about disseminating this information, that we really could maximize the impact of the data that we collected. And so then we were able to kind of parse out that data from just looking at the nutrition and dietetics programs and publish a paper on the status of integrating interprofessional education into our programs.
So then in turn, we published an article and comparing the 2012 and the 2015 data for just athletic training in the Athletic Training Education Journal. One of the things that, as you may have noticed in each of these articles, the authorship order changes. And I think that's really important that you have those authorship discussions early, because we really want whoever the first author of each of these collaborative articles are in is to really have the last touch on the article and really publish it in their voice. You know, Katie and I, even though we have a lot of synergies between each other, we have a little different voice when we write, and I think you definitely have to respect each other when it comes to that. If someone has been designated as the first author on a paper, you need to let them submit it and them make the final touches on it, so their voice comes through in that article. Also, when we decided authorship order, those types of things like that, we really look at kind of who needs this involvement at a certain time. You know, once I became a tenured faculty member and Katie was in pre-tenure status, we gave her more and more opportunities to kind of move up the authorship ladder, so she had several more first authorship articles, even though we really collaborated equally in each of those projects. So when we talk about one of the things that we started, once we developed this collaboration, we got this chance to teach together in a course called IPE 1100, which is Introduction to Interprofessional Healthcare. This course has about 10 health professions involved and about 250 students each semester. So you can see an example of our interprofessional auditorium at St. Louis University, where we teach this class, where we leverage technology to allow teams to work together in class. As a part of that, we realized that this is an assessment opportunity for us. And so we worked with some other people in the office, Dr. Leslie Hinyard, who was the Associate Director of the Center for Interprofessional Education and Research, and Eileen Toomey, which is another one of those doctoral students who worked in the office as a research assistant. And we actually developed a self-assessed collaboration skills instrument, and we took it through the entire validation process. And it was an amazing experience. What was really nice is that we had quite a large N, so we had some power in this, and it allowed us to be able to move quickly and appropriately through this process to do this. But it was really a great opportunity, as Katie and I taught this class together for several semesters in a row. This picture you're seeing is actually, we brought a patient and his mother in with the students in a very moving class that our students like every year.
And so with that instrument, we were actually able to publish this paper in Evaluation in the Health Professions. And as you see there, Dr. Hinyard is the first author on that, because she was really the lead on the design and development of being able to validate that instrument. And so for me as a scholar, I think this was also a turning point of being really invested in actually working with the development and validation of this instrument that we have then been able to go on and use for our own research, and then in contributing to the research of other projects. One of those specifically, after we validated the instrument, then we actually used it to study the effectiveness of the introductory interprofessional education course that we teach, like from that previous picture that Tony showed. And what we found from looking at that really helped us to inform our teaching and to inform teaching for other people. And then Tony's going to talk a little bit about how we're actually currently still using that instrument in some of the work that we're doing with other institutions.
Yeah, and actually that article is no longer in press. We did present this scholarship in Dublin. When at the time we did, it was in press, but now it is been published in that journal. So also just as another side note is that we were able to, this year, we were able to re-administer that assessment to the students that were in that class as freshmen as seniors. So we're very excited about that project. And it should be a fairly interesting view of the SAC. So then coming into this other continuing collaboration. So this all came together at the Collaborating Cross Borders meeting in Banff in Canada. We were presenting, and I attended some other presentations from Kelly Lockman at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I realized that we're teaching the same content at kind of the same level, but we're teaching it differently, and we're using different instruments. So I had mentioned to her about, hey, do we want to get together and do a multi-center research project, which is really something that's really needed. Too many times, many of these instruments are utilized in a single context with a single group of students, and really for the most part we need to start assessing them across in other contexts and other learning levels, those types of things. And so so she got on board, and then a week later I was at the ASAP meeting, and I ran into the faculty, Karen Pardue and Bunny Mills from University of New England, and they're like doing a very similar thing also, and they're like, hey, we want to get on board, and they used the University of West England questionnaire. So then all of a sudden we have 3 instruments, 3 institutions, and then Kelly brought along Tina Gonaldo from and her faculty from LSU Health Sciences Center in New Orleans, and so we developed a 4-institution collaborative where we've worked together to utilize 3 different instruments in 4 different learning contexts, and we're beginning to publish and finish that project. And the first of being is this article in the Journal of Allied Health where we talked really about the process of how we came together. And without these other collaborative scholarship projects that we did before, I don't think we would have quite the confidence that we did with this project, but we really did. We really were able to bring some really great people together that were really passionate about their scholarship, and our calls were amazing. We really walked our talk with regard to collaboration, and it was it's been a pretty great experience. And we still have several articles that are in review right now, so we're really excited moving forward.
And then Tony, do you want to talk a little bit about the ASAP Summit and what's going on with this project as well?
Yeah, so in my role with ASAP, which has now renamed itself the Association of Schools Advancing Health Professions, we came together with the Industry and Partnership Group and the Clinical Education Task Force to host a summit. And what we found that is, if you really want the voice of industry and if you really want the voice of clinicians, you can't expect them to come to a academic conference. They're very limited in their time. They have limited resources regarding what conferences they can go to. So what we decided to do is, in St. Louis, we decided to actually host a regional summit where we brought together healthcare professionals and academics and leadership and administrators to our campus. And we really did a collaborative summit where we really took the time to set the stage and then have some hard conversations about how to improve collaboration between clinical practice and academic programs. And so we were able to host this summit in 2019, and we are continuing to work on that. We are developing a plan of regional summits. However, they have been delayed a bit by the pandemic that we're going through right now. And we're in the process of writing a manuscript on this activity. Katie is part of that team, and then we have already published the report on this.
Great. And I think as we've kind of walked through our story, kind of developing where we came from, our roots, it's really important for us to look back on who has mentored us as scholars, as educators along the way. And certainly, because both of us, our academic careers began at St. Louis University, and were really nurtured by the director, Irma Rubling, the initial director of the Center for Interprofessional Education and Research there, and also by the current director, David Pohl, who were instrumental in helping us to develop as scholars. Also, I've recognized that there have been individuals who have really helped walk alongside me with my path through scholarship, and they're listed there. Dr. Mardell Wilson, who is the Dean of the Doisy Health Sciences College at St. Louis University, and then a personal mentor within my own profession, Dr. Kathy Kolasa, who I continue to work on projects for interprofessional education and research in nutrition and dietetics, and then also with Pat Cuff. She is the director of the Global Forum on Interprofessional Health Professions Education from the National Academies of Science. So just recognizing that these very distinguished, very established individuals would take the time to mentor me in this area is something that we always like to do.
Yeah, in addition to Irma and David that Katie has recognized, I had several really key mentors that helped me through the process. And I had a scholarship mentor at St. Louis University. I still do, Randy Richter. He was great. He did not really try to steer me through the process. He really was a listener, and he also kept track of what I was passionate about, and he would come back and revisit us. And if I said I was going to get something done by a certain time, he would have that written down, and we'd come back and say, well, did you get that abstract submitted? Did you get that data collected? Did you get that grant application submitted? Those types of things. He was really, really good. He was very strategic about how I engaged with the rank and tenure system too, which was really, really helpful. Russ Richardson was the chair of the Education Council, and him and I were the co-authors on the on the white paper that we wrote on IPE in athletic training. You know, he was so empowering. He really gave me the confidence to really think big, which was really very, very helpful. You know, when you first get started in any of these things, it's so intimidating, and you're afraid to take on big projects. And Russ was amazing. And then Scott Reeves, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him. We invited him to speak on our campus, and I really established a connection with him. I was able to do some research projects with him. I'm an associate editor for the Journal of Interprofessional Care, thanks to Scott, and he's so missed. I mean, the way he went about his business, his knowledge, his commitment to the field of interprofessional education, collaborative practice is hard to replace. But we're trying to fulfill his dreams and his aspirations regarding that.
So as we started looking at how do we make this work, there were some guiding principles that we realized that we had been engaged in through our collaborative scholarship. And so we'll talk a little bit about these. And really this first bucket, this being truly collaborative, these are things that we just brainstorm together. What is it that we do? What is it that we both bring to the table that makes this work? And I think that we are both very loyal to the process, loyal to our work together. We are also very humble. We're willing to take feedback from each other, and that's been, I know for me, really important to recognize my limitations and then the contributions of others. We've also been very generous with our time. I know Tony's been very generous with his mentoring of me, like he mentioned. You know, after he was tenured, he really brought me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes in a way that was very encouraging. We also have to be very resilient. I will admit it was easier to do this when we were just across the hall from each other, and you know, if we got a review back that maybe we didn't agree with, or something was, you know, not accepted, you know, we could march over to the other person's office and have a, you know, second of needing to have the other one kind of pick you up by your bootstraps. But we still do that from afar, I think. But it just looks a little bit different. Tony, do you want to talk about the other bullet points?
Yeah, regarding shared scholarship, there's really some guiding principles we have as we work together, and these are kind of the ground rules, kind of our operating principles. So one of the ones it's really important to establish the roles for each project. Everybody brings different strengths and it has different weaknesses, and we need to embrace those roles. And once those roles are established, we need to respect those roles for each other, because I think if there's nothing worse than thinking that you're 3/4 of the way through a process and then have another person that wants to kind of reach outside of their role and kind of kicks you back in the timeline. That can be really difficult. Establish a timeline for project outcomes so you can hold people accountable. Otherwise, you never get things done. I think, you know, the whole issue with, you know, people being ABD and those types of things like that. You know, a lot of these projects are about momentum, and they're about, you know, holding each other accountable. And if you don't establish that timeline, you really can't go back and revisit it and say, you know, hey, we were supposed to get these reviews back to each other by this time. We really need to get moving on this. You know, because a lot of times, you know, people's tenure clocks and those types of things are moving quickly, and also some of the data just gets old, you know, and if you can't keep these projects moving forward, it can be a problem. And then you want to really talk about your maximum impact of outcomes. When we talked about the athletic training and nutrition and dietetics project, we thought about where the data needed to be presented, so that, you know, we really looked at the kind of the combined data in the Journal of Allied Health, and then we looked at each of our professions' specific education journals, and we move forward with that.
And we also realize that there are things that each of us brings to the table that complements each other's skill sets. And so when we look at this slide, we think about, we actually kind of worked together and said, okay, what do you think I bring to the table, and vice versa. And so I'll talk actually first about Tony, because what he brings to the collaboration is an energy, a kind of a fearlessness, a let's do this, let's be bold and creative, and very often really brings that concept or that idea to the collaboration.
Yeah, and it's funny, and it was really cool. I remember the day we did this. We sat across the desk and we wrote on a piece of paper, you know, 3 things about each other. And you know, what Katie brings is Katie is thorough. She's reflective. She's able to take in that one extra read through the work and you know, and add those fine touches to it that sometimes I might be a little in a hurry or something like that, and those types of things. And so what's funny is that the analogy that we use a lot, that I'm the black lab and she's the one holding the leash. So, and it works well. You know, you can't have 2 black labs, otherwise you know, tear your house apart, and you can't have all these people hanging onto the leash, and otherwise you won't get anywhere. So, we love we actually get to the point now where we can be at a meeting and look at each other, and we know exactly kind of what each other is thinking and those types of things, and we really value that collaboration with each other.
Absolutely. And then how do we make it work? We talked about this, Tony talked about it a little earlier, but we develop a timetable, and we actually have an example of that on our next slide. And like you mentioned, we have those tough conversations early about who's going to be first author, second author, who's going to contribute, what those tasks specifically are, and that we hold each other accountable. So Tony, do you want to talk a little bit about accountability?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and communicate consistently. I think that's one of the problems that people get into in this day and age is that they fail to understand the importance of getting back to people and communicating consistently, especially when you're remote. You know, if you send something out to somebody, you expect an answer, and if you don't get an answer, you're thinking, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? Those types of things like that. Another thing is encourage quality and rigor. Everybody does not have the same feeling about what is perceived as rigorous, and don't be afraid to speak up and say, you know what, this isn't good enough. We've got to dig a little deeper. We got to dive into the literature a little bit more. We really don't, or like, we don't have a right to make that assumption with our data. You know, we need to make sure we back off a little bit and those types of things like that, because it's not as generalizable as we might think. And then meet timetable deadlines, you know, and be really honest with people. Like, if you don't feel like you can keep up with this timetable, it's okay that you step away from our project for a little while. That's fine. But you got to let the other people keep moving, and I think that's really important.
So this is an example of the actual time table that we use when we're planning scholarship. And this one was from that first major project that we worked on together. And we pretty much always start with, you know, what are our major themes and what might we get out of that as far as a presentation and manuscripts. And then there are dates and who does what. I have to say that with this project, we were only off on submission dates, if at all. It would have been by just a few months. I mean, we hit all of our points, but also we do have flexibility because we realize that everyone is busy, and you know, maybe it wasn't summer of 2015 that we submitted something, but it was fall, and we're okay with that, and we can revisit that. And so we have used this table for pretty much every project that we've worked on, I think, right, Tony?
Yeah. If it involves multiple, you know, dissemination of the research, sometimes in like maybe a small kind of side project we don't, but for the most part, whenever it's a larger project, we use one like this. Another thing is, you notice that we really decide who's the writer and who are the reviewers for each section, because that way you know, different people look at things differently, but you still have to honor the lead author's ability to communicate that to the reader. And so if we say, you know, that we would just like you to review this article and give some feedback, but you know, the final revisions are based with the lead authors. Also, people's time is very limited. This allows them to plan their time out. For example, Dean Wilson was a great contributor to our paper, but she couldn't spend a lot of time writing because of her very busy schedule. So she felt that this was a great way to structure her time in this paper where she did not feel committed to do a lot of the writing, but she could review it and really take a look at it through the administrator's eye, which was really added some extra perspective to these papers.
So one of the things that we found along the way is, because we know that we work well together, but also we like to invite others into our collaboration, like Tony mentioned with our in our collaborative group from the other institutions. And so one of the things that I think we've both learned is that we really need to be strategic about inviting others either from our own department or our own institutions. One of the things I've found in being a new faculty member at a new institution is that I go to a lot of other people's research talks, so I can just simply hear what they're interested in and maybe identify that there's an opportunity for collaboration. And sometimes that's actually outside of my own department or my institution. I think that's something that keeps things fun and exciting. I recently submitted a paper with a group of dietitians from all across the country, and it's been such a great opportunity to just get the flavor of what's going on in different places. It's expanded my horizons as well. And I think the other thing is to be creative, to go beyond typical colleagues, maybe even outside of just your typical health sciences center programs. You know, who's in the College of Education or Arts and Sciences and Theater? You know, is there something that you could do there?
Yeah, I agree. I mentioned earlier about the colleagues from organizational industrial psychology. They are team science experts, and they really can help with regarding methodology and measurement and those types of things like that.
Absolutely. And then Tony, do you want to talk a little bit about, since you're the social media guru in
Yeah, you know, I think don't be afraid to brand yourself. You know, if you really have a great collaboration that you see working together for a long time, you know, wear it proudly. Like, we have this collaboration called Be Collaborative. If you can figure out the acronym, it's Breitbach and Eliot. And we have our own social media feeds. We've actually gotten to the point where we feel that we're sharing some important information out there in social media. It's created some opportunities for us to do some things, and don't be afraid to do that. You know, I think people are longing for some trusted information coming across Twitter and LinkedIn and those types of things like that. So, you know, kind of, you know, don't be afraid to brand yourself a little bit. I mean, you know, make sure that it's you know, it's sincere and authentic, but you know, I would not hesitate to do that. Twitter is a great resource for academic resources. Nearly every journal posts all of their articles on there. As long as you can stay away from the politics in the business, you'll be okay.
Great. Okay.
This was another article that was published by Vogel and colleagues in 2018 that really also gave some great ideas on how to get organized in collaborative research. It hits on a lot of the same things we talked about this earlier. One of the things is really as far as having those conversations to kind of get the ground rules, how do you bring the collaborators together, those types of things. When we were talking earlier in our presentation about establish kind of your ground rules early, this really has some good questions to ask as you're doing that. I think not only this article, but then also our article that we published with the Research Collaborative in the Journal of Allied Health gives some good hints on, as you're coming together, what are the types of things that you want to keep in mind. So, who's managing the data, who's doing the IRB. You can't have multiple IRB applications going on at one time. Those types of things like that. It comes back to really understanding what strengths you bring to a team. And when Katie talked about being strategic about who you bring onto your team, you really need to have people with the consistent work ethic, a consistent level of generosity, and also you need to make sure all the skill sets are covered. You need to make sure that there are the meticulous people, and then there's the energy people, and the people that understand the literature. I think if you bring a lot of energy but maybe not totally understand the depth of the literature in a field, you might want to look for a colleague that can help you in that regard. Those types of things like that. So this is an excellent article. Also, I would suggest it highly.
Great, thanks, Tony. So I think that is it. Tony, do you have any other comments or thoughts?
No, I thank you for this opportunity. Katie and I, even though she left SLU to go to Oklahoma University, we still maintain a great collaboration with each other. We still are doing a lot of scholarship together, but we also have our own projects that we're doing, and that's part of respecting each other's path and those types of things. If you want to learn more about us, you can go to our blog, which is bcollaborative.org, or our Twitter feed. Follow us on Twitter at B4IPE. And then obviously you can email, Katie and I whenever you have any questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Be safe, stay healthy.